Hey girl, how are you?
I am so excited to be having this conversation. I think it's been a long time coming. Y'all don't know this, but I have been a silent admirer of Melissa maybe since I was in grad school or like.
Oh my gosh, really? Because I've been admiring you. I feel like we've been trying to make these conversations happen for like at least 2 years, at least.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, I mean, so when I was in grad school, I knew I wanted to be in private practice. I knew I wanted to do the work as a therapist. And so I was just like, where the Black therapists at? And not just like the Black therapists, but like, I need the Black therapists that are like talking the talk, walking the walk, sound like me, are from New York, all of the things. So I was definitely like looking and following, like, okay, so when I'm done, these are the people that I want to like look up to. And so, yeah, girl, it's been a minute.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. That warms my heart to hear. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes. And so for me, it's been a long time coming because, kind of like as I shared in my previous role as a social worker, and even though I don't like you never kind of stop being a social worker and doing social work things. But in my role as a therapist, it was very important to me to, see folks who look like me, who sound like me, and were doing work that sounded like the work that I wanted to do. And then, I've also just watched your journey and really, your work just seems to be a lot more dynamic now than, just providing therapy. So let's start off there and just talk to us about what you do and the mission and the work that you're leading now.
That is so hard for me to label for a lot of different reasons. I still find myself playing with different terminologies and words and sentence structures. But essentially, what I say is that I work with Black women to support them in understanding all the messages that show up in their body and to be able to use those messages to craft the lives that they're purposed to have. In my spiritual tradition, we believe that we come earthside, like knowing our purpose, knowing our walk, and being guided towards that. And unfortunately, when we have lived experiences that can shift us and shape us into a certain way of being to be able to cope, we can kind of get off track from that. And so then what we want to do is discount all the messages in the body and the spirit, right? And so I do a lot of work with Black women specifically. That's, my specialty, but I support other people as well. We tend to prioritize working with people of color to really understand, that the body holds ancestral knowledge, right? And it holds all the information that you need if you can learn to not continue to simply be in survival state, but in thriving state. And so, that's the work that I really do in all the ways that I do the work.
OMG. All right, hold on, because you said a lot. You said so many good things. And so how do you do that? What does that work look like for you?
Okay. So if we're talking tangibles like titles and programs and whatever. So yeah, I'm, the owner of a boutique group practice and, we serve clients in Florida, Georgia, and New York, and we prioritize an embodied somatic work. Right. So really understanding that, trauma lives in the body and that clearing out that trauma in the body looks like having the capacity to listen to the information that the pain points are bringing up and then teaching skills to expand window of tolerance and to understand yourself differently through a different lens, right? So that you can learn your patterns, break up those patterns and choose new things. So that's the therapy work, right? So if we're throwing around some titles, somatic therapy, EMDR, blah, 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 blah. And I say blah, 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 not out of disrespect, but I say blah, blah, blah because we know that those are Western titles placed on ancestral healing knowledge that, we have to use in the therapy world for insurance reimbursement or to make it make sense to people who don't come from a spiritual lens, right? I'm blessed to say that most of my clients, all of my clients, either come with a spiritual lens or they're seeking to grow that understanding. And so when we're talking about spirit, we're talking about knowledge, like energetic knowledge that is not just material, right? Sometimes it's unexplainable. I actually saw a quote today that says that magic is uncolonized science, right?
Ooh,
Right?
I felt that.
Magic is uncolonized science. And so the work that I deeply love and I'm passionate about is merging the spiritual and the clinical, right? Helping people to understand that what has happened to you materially, earthside, to your physical body, sometimes it's a lived experience, sometimes it's an ancestral experience, and that there are things happening energetically that can be shifted, and that spiritual sciences can be used to support you. I'm a priest in my spiritual practice, which is, Lukumi. Some people call it Santeria. I'm a priest of Oshun. So there's certain information that I've been taught there. And that's also embedded in my ancestral knowledge there. I'm attuned to master level 4 Reiki. I'm trained in sound healing. I do a lot of embodied work. I am a spiritual medium as well. So all of those things come together on the coaching wellness side to support me in working with women throughout the whole world to understand themselves deeper and to move really beyond pain. We have a story as, Black people who have embodied trauma that is very much rooted in pain and survival. And we take on stories rooted in pain and survival. And I really am passionate about helping us to move beyond that and all the different ways that looks for the individual that I'm servicing at the time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. I am trying really hard to not take notes because you are just first of all, you're just spitting bars, right? Around and just knowledge and facts around how much of what we've come to know today as therapy and certain modalities are really co-opted indigenous practices, right?
100%, yeah.
I remember maybe a few years ago, I had never really, I've heard of IFS, internal family systems. But it was just out of my wheelhouse. It wasn't, I was training in couples and family work then. So I really was not trying to even give any of my time to any other modality because that was such an intense training.
Yeah, because you went through a pretty intense training, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Ma'am. Intense is probably a fucking understatement. That's why I be don't wait, listen. I'm good at what I do. It wasn't just because of the training, just because of a certificate or whatever. It's just the depth and the amount of personal, your personal stuff that comes up obviously all the time. But
look at my eyes, look at my eyes, look at my eyes, look at my eyes. Yeah.
You could do this work and completely put your personal stuff in a box. And that training, there was no way around that. I really had to face a lot of stuff, which I think makes me good at what I do,
100%. Because what I would say is you can do this work and you can put your stuff in the box. I question though whether you can do this work well and put your stuff in the box. Because, we know a lot of people walking around calling themselves healers, helpers, and therapists who one conversation, you ain't done no work, no self-work, right?
Ma'am. But that's a beautiful segue to my question. But just to kind of go back to what I was saying about IFS, when I actually went and looked it up, I was like, oh, this is parts work? Wait, so you mean to tell me that me doing soul retrievals is the same thing that people be paying thousands of, wait, what? Nuts. But anyway, yes, all of therapy is colonized, co-opted indigenous practice. I said it, whatever. It's my podcast.
Especially the more that you get into the ones that are most accepted right now, right? It used to be a time where they would be like, oh, that's woo-woo, that doesn't make any sense. But hello, now they're saying, oh, the issues are in the tissues, right? So when spiritual people have been saying all along, this is in your body, we have to do body work, we have to do meditation, we have to do, oh no, that doesn't matter. Like, it hasn't been studied, don't do that. And now they're like offering this to cancer patients because they understand that like how your spirit works, right, helps to heal the body, that they know that it all works together now. So yeah. I can go on a tangent about that. I won't take us off track, but yes, absolutely. It's just all colonized,
Yeah, there may need to be a part two because yes, this is anyway, yes. So, I am always, and I think we might have like bonded in a comment or DM or something over this, right? The fact that there is like the human work and then there is the spiritual work. And I know you alluded to some practitioners, right, who haven't really integrated both, right? Or they present super spiritual or like super woo-woo or like whatever you want to call it. But again, you talk to them and it's like, baby, you've never seen a therapist a day in your life. And like, that's problematic, right? If you are leading other folks who are looking to you to guide them. And so, when you think about the human work and the spiritual work, like, how do you define each, and how might they be similar or different?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. So when I think about the human, what I'm thinking about are often our lived experiences that have impacted us. For lack of a better, deeper explanation, right? So I'm going to actually back up and start here and then kind of go a little bit deeper. When I'm thinking about the human element, I'm often starting with the ego. Right? What are the stories that you've come to embody, right, based off of your lived experiences that are dictating how you show up in the world and the expectations that you have of others? When I'm thinking about the spiritual realm, I'm thinking about things that are absent of the ego, and I'm also thinking about things in terms of how we perceive, what we know that isn't necessarily grounded in material knowledge, right? The things that can't necessarily be touched, the things that, can't necessarily be explained. And oftentimes when we're talking about merging the human and the spiritual, we are talking about like that, energetic signature that transcends experience, right? So we're like taking things out of the material world, like these things that are explainable, that are touchable, that you can say A plus B plus C equals D, and you're moving into what is simply explainable by knowing, by experiencing, by engaging with, versus the logical explanation. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? So we're 100%. Moving more into things that are not tangible, but they're explainable simply because they're valid in the experience and in the embodying of the experience.
Yep. And so how, like, do you think that they're both required, right?
Oh, God, yes.
Self-actualization, we think about, becoming our highest self, our best selves, whatever language folks, feel comfortable with. How do you see the two of them come together?
Well, in my opinion, my definition, my understanding, how I move through this work and in this world, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Right? Spiritual beings having a human experience. There are things that we are living in, existing in, that have been here from before us, right? We have a collective unconsciousness. We have an individual subconsciousness. And we still have the human experience, right? This idea, one of my most longstanding clients, we have gotten into these little conversations around the spiritual concept of removing the ego, right? Meaning that, you get to a place where nothing phases you. You get to a place where you want nothing. You get to a place where you're so zened out that like everything is great. Everything is gravy. No one can offend you. And this is what people believe that they're supposed to be seeking. And, one of the things that I have shared with, these group of women who we've been doing a lot of work together is I think that that's dangerous, right? Period, because we are on earth. And, sometimes you need to connect to what your earthly self is engaging in so that you can even move to, quote unquote, the higher self or the best self. Like we need to acknowledge, right, what our earthly beings need. And also as people of color, it's very dangerous to move around the world without an ego, right? Earthside without any connection to your ego, because we don't have the luxury of not acknowledging systems that are designed to create pain for us and pain that the body is constantly assaulted by. So I think that you have to be doing the work in both realms consistently to be able to move through this lived experience that we have and to be able to move beyond some of our ancestral experiences and our spiritual experiences, because we operate in different realms constantly and you can't ignore any of it. The minute that you want to move beyond where you are, or you want to function outside of what is your reality, you are trying to deny and ignore something. And the more that you ignore something that is actually happening for you, the louder the body will speak to you, right? So the louder the spirit will speak to you. And then you'll be showing up in ways that are ego driven, right? Because you haven't dealt with and addressed breaches, hurts, and pain. So we have to be able to integrate and, live a full existence, accept all of us, to be able to really move beyond, right, points of pain.
Yep. And so what does that look like, right? Because I love that you spoke about, both of these things kind of need to come together. There needs to be an integration, but you kind of alluded to, like, you can kind of be over to the left a little bit or over to the right, whatever it is at either end. And so what does it look like when someone is super focused, or, the example that you gave, when you're just like not at all paying attention to the pain in your body, not paying attention to your spirit? Like, what might someone like that present, or vice versa?
Yeah. So not paying attention to the fullness of your experience, right? The spiritual and the human experience can look like self-gaslighting, right? Meaning that you have an experience, you feel something, and you feel something, but you tell yourself that you shouldn't. Everything is okay. Everything is always roses. Everything is always love and light, right? Even when there are situations that can create harm, or where you feel the harm, you convince yourself that you should not be experiencing harm in those situations. And this isn't to say that you can't do a self-check to say, is this really, or but if you always find that you should never feel offended, right? You should never have conversations with people when there are experiences that feel harmful, when you're always second guessing your perspective in a situation, when it's always you and never them, especially when we're talking about systems, then you are desiring to move beyond a very real experience that you're having earthside, right? And then the flip side is it's also true. If it's always them and it's never you, then you're not doing any self-reflection, right? So whenever you're seeing things very black and white, whenever you're seeing things as an all or nothing, whenever you find yourself in a situation where there's a difficulty sitting in discomfort, and you always rush to a fix that is on, either side of a solution or an issue, then you are not actually doing the work. You are simply trying to bypass the experience that you're having. And so that can be spiritual bypassing as well. And so we want to make sure that we're in a place where we are learning how to sit in discomfort so that we can gather all of the information that is present for us, right? So what do we want to do? What is our role in the situation? What is someone else's role in the situation? What are some things that we need to be considering that could be trauma triggers? What is our higher or like our future self asking for us to do in these situations. There's so many layers, but you have to be able to sit in the discomfort and not simply try to move past it very quickly to really get to the grit of the lesson and the opportunity, right, that these experiences are giving us.
Yep. And discomfort is hard, right? Like it's uncomfortable. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you say to someone that's like, yeah, Melissa, but like I don't want to sit in the muck, right? Like I don't want to sit in what feels hard.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why can't I just collect information from social media and like self-heal?
Because you'll be right back
Shots
here.
fired. Yeah, let me
You'll
stop.
be right back here. You know, I say you. Excuse me. One of my taglines is "You get to choose," right? And so I tell people, you absolutely get to choose that. You don't have to go through this right now. You don't have to do all this hard work right now. You don't have to sit right now. You can keep doing whatever you've been doing to cope, whatever you've been telling yourself, whatever you've been, whoever you've been underneath, whoever you've been on top of, whatever you've been smoking, whatever you can keep doing all of that. You can even continue to simply try and pray it away, right? You can simply keep doing the rituals to believe that it will magically go away without doing this work. And I'll see you back here next year. Right? I'll see you right back in the same space, in the same situation with a different person, a different job, a different relationship, a different child giving you a problem, a different physical illness next year. Because you can't escape it. So you have the right to choose not to deal with it. And you also have the right to engage with the consequences that will come when you choose not to deal with it, right? Yes. These are all your choices, but I'm not going to force you to do anything that you don't want to do. And whenever you're ready to do this piece of the work, I'm here. I might be here, but I'm here. You know what I mean?
Right. What did you mean when you said that like body ailments? What were you alluding to?
Well, what happens, what we know to be true, right? We've known this for centuries, right? When it's come to, spiritual work, and what, Western science is now acknowledging is that when you have emotional challenges, they show up in illness in the body. So anxiety, right, turns into, GI issues and, reflux, right? You can get high blood pressure, you can get hypertension. Too much anxiety in the body creates an acidic environment. Acidic environments lead to cancer in the body, right? So we've understood this spiritually, but now Western science is able to say, yeah, this is true. So you have to be able to, manage your moods. So there really is no escaping it. Right? You can say that you want to pick up all these things from social media. Social media is designed to give you snippets. It's designed to spark your attention. I love a good retreat. I host retreats, but retreats that are held as simply a moment in time, right? And this is a pet peeve I have. So simply a moment in time. You drop in, you hold space with a person. And sometimes those people are not clinically trained, or they don't have anybody on staff who is clinically trained. And when I say clinical, I don't mean that they have to be a therapist, but they have to be somebody who's deeply embedded in this work to be able to support you through the process and give you tools, beyond your short stint. If that's the only thing that you're doing, then you're only doing half the work, right? So you're dropping into these spaces and you go home. Then you go home, right? So you drop it to social media, you go home. You take a course, you go home. You go to a retreat, you go home. You go to yoga, you go home. You go to sound healing, you go home. But there's no one guiding you through the in-depth, day-to-day, soul-searching accountability and ego work that's necessary for the shift and change that you desire. There is no one doing that for you. You can go to a retreat, but if you don't have nobody at home supporting you, what are you doing? Right? Very little. Very little. All that work will be undone because we live our lives every single day. We have, developed these ways of being over 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. And so you think a weekend, 5 days, 10 days, 2 weeks, is gonna just change. No, you go back to living your life and those same coping skills show up again. So you have to be committed to having people, right? Natural supports as well as helpers who say to you, I'm gonna check you on that. I'm gonna push you on that. You're wrong about that. That's not what's happening. Have you considered this perspective? And if you're not prepared for that, be prepared to stay right where you are. Right? One of the challenges that I see often is that people come into seeking, we'll label it healing, right? But there is no healed, right? There's a consistent work of healing. But like people come into healing work from a place of wanting to stop the pain. Right? There's something painful happening. There's a pain point. There's a painful experience, or they lived a life of like multiple points of pain. And then when the pain is no longer there, they don't want to do anymore, even though there is still more to do. I believe in taking rests and breaks. But if you're praying for something, this is the spiritual part. If you're praying for something, and then you stop the work that it needs for you to actually achieve what you're praying for, stop praying. Stop praying. Because all you're doing is you're asking your ancestors, you're asking God, you're asking Spirit to do work for you and demonstrating Earthside that you are no longer willing to do the work. Coming out of the pain is only a part of it. Stepping into the fullness of what your purpose to have is the other part. And that's also hard. And then that also requires work. And that's another piece of what requires you to be okay with discomfort.
Lord, there may need to be like 4 parts to this, honestly, because I want to do a deep dive into like literally every other word that you say, because it's just so good. So just thank you so much for your generosity. 2 things that I kind of want to point out here, and I have a clarifying question. I really loved how you're talking about the different modalities, right? Because I think, 2020 had a lot to do with this, right? Where people are like waking up and they're like, what the fuck? What am I doing? And what relationship? And like, I want to like actually have a say in the life that I lead. And now, there's just so many different ways to kind of get your healing fix is the way that I think about it. And what I really love that you shared here is that like people really need, or at least the way that I think about it is like an advisory board, right? Like you need a team around you, right? That it's not just the retreat leader. It's not just the therapist. It's not just, the person you go to for a reading or it's not just your acupuncturist. It's like everyone is working synergistically. And that's actually the way that I work, both as a practitioner, but also with my clients. Like if they're seeing other practitioners, I was like, what forms you got to fill out? Because I want to talk to them. We really got to make sure that we're working together for you. Right. But I think that, living in this society that is so individualistic, right? That is so like, I'm going to go ahead and like piecemeal my healing. Is like, why? Right? You have to understand that different things, different practitioners, different modalities are going to do different things. You can't get everything from one person.
Yeah, but it makes sense that people think that way because, look at how we're trained, right? Oh. So you're raised and you go to the doctor only when you have symptoms, right? So you have a cough, then you're going to the doctor and the doctor's going to give you medication for the symptom. They're like not going to talk to you about if you have things that you're holding on to that you're not communicating with the people that you love, right? They're not going to talk to you about the food that you eat to see if it's creating some like internal thing that will then like they're not going to talk to you about your mood, right? Like they're not like it's the symptom. And so as socially we're constructed that way where we simply think about what is bothering us and what thing can we do to remediate that thing that is bothering us. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Right? And so as opposed to considering like I'm a whole person. Imagine that, right? So my brain and my nervous system work together, and like spiritually, there are things that like ancestrally we know are in our DNA that our ancestors experienced that like also impact our nervous system. Imagine that. And so there might not be certain foods I can eat. And you know, my man is kind of greasy, and so he comes with his own, karmic energy that I have to deal with in the form of like all of these past relationships that have gone unmended with him. So like, imagine the conflicts that we have in our relationship. Imagine that. Like, we don't think about ourselves as whole people because we haven't been trained to, because from a colonized perspective, it serves these systems for us to break ourselves apart, right? And so when we're seeking care, we think, oh yeah, like I want to go to my doctor for this, right? Because they're going to give me medicine for this. And then maybe I'll go see someone to get a reading because there's a crisis in my life. Not really understanding that like when you get readings, even if it's tarot, whatever, especially if it's Odu, there's depth there that can be drawn on, right? People think, oh, well, like I picked up this, tarot deck yesterday, so I'm going to start giving tarot readings now, and not knowing that there's depth there. I've been a clinical social worker for 24 years this year.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Okay. 24 years. And so what does that mean? That means that there's depth here. I'm a new baby priest. So, right, that means I have a spiritual godmother who I can be like, I'm going to consult with my clients first and be like, I need to go have this consultation. I'm going to go have a conversation and be like, I think, let's figure it out, because she has like more years than me and she has elders. When we used to live, we are a communal people, right? We lived and existed ancestrally in villages, right? Even though I was born in Guyana, my father's people are from Barbados, we are still a part of the diasporic slave trade, right? Like enslavement. And, like the more I do my own ancestral work, we're still village people. Mm-hmm. We're still village people. And so in the village, everybody knows your business. And so when you go to one healer, they know that you went to that healer, and everybody's talking. And yes, there's offense to that, but it also supports the village in loving on you differently in a whole way. And so, one of the things I love about my work is, I can have a consultation with someone, I can have a session with someone, and as my spiritual gifts develop, spirit will be like, yeah, there's something they're not saying. It's something they haven't spoken. And so, people now know, because I'm no longer ashamed to say it, right? This is a piece of what comes with the work that we do. When I say to them, so I'm hearing there's something you haven't said. And so until you say it, I really can't help you, because we just, and then I see them smile or smirk or cry. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to wait until you're ready, because it's confirmation for me. And so we get to work with the whole person when we acknowledge all of them. And, I'm like you, I'm referring you to the person who does Reiki, because I don't do Reiki that way anymore, right? I'm referring you to someone for a reading. I'm referring you to this naturopathic doctor who I love. I'm referring you to the herbalist. We're going to talk about how it all works together. Oh, you have to go do an Ebo? Okay, let me talk to you about the significance of that, because that person, like, let's have some real conversations about the fullness of who you are, right? Because we're used to having to wear masks in all of these spaces, that we even wear masks with ourselves. And I really want people to stop that. Like, you are a whole person. And so let's look at all of you so that we can really do work with all of you,
Yeah.
So,
Here's to people being whole and well, right?
Yeah.
Like, you deserve to be both. You said that once people start feeling better, they think that the work is done, right? But that's really when the work like begins, right? Because you kind of, we've gotten the pain out of the way, that is no longer distracting you. Now you have created capacity to really focus on the work, right? Or that there's this maybe misguidance that, you can manifest, can ask for certain things or want to manifest certain things, and you're kind of confused as to like your part in that. That like you don't just set up the altar and it's like, okay, let me say like the 3 things that I want.
That
Okay,
joint be dry.
See you in 2 weeks. Bye. I'll be ready when you drop my man from my front door. Bye. But yes or yes, that's what people think is required.
100%. And not realizing that you set up the altar, you ask for what it is that you desire. And then you might go on a date and the man that you met, you don't align with, right? So you have to understand, okay, this person, because it could be man, woman, right? This person showed up for a reason. And so, like, how did I attract them, right? Like, what's happening with me? What aligned, what didn't? What fit, what didn't, right? What did I do, right? What did I do in this connection that demonstrates an aspect of me that, like, either I love or I don't love so much? And so what's the information that was gleaned from the experience that tells me the work that needs to be done, right? But like, we don't want that. We want to be able to say they need to come bearing gifts. They need to come feeding my ego, essentially, right? Like, you need to come making me feel good for me to know that this is the connection for me, or for me to be able to say that, like, I'm on the right path, or my ancestors are, answering my prayers. The answer to the prayers is in so much of the work that you don't want to do. It's in every single step that comes from the work that you don't want to do, from the person that you don't want to, forgive, for the, like, looking at yourself and not understanding, why you can't find peace in certain situations. All of that is also the work. Even if you're in a place that feels comfortable, once there isn't the fullness of the lived experience, there's still more work to do. There's still more work to do. Because, when the work is done, earth side, like your energy earth side, will no longer be here and you will transition. But as long as you're earth side, there's work to do.
Yeah.
There's work to do.
100%. It really grinds my gears, that yes, manifestation works 100%. Like, I'm not contesting that, but I think that, it's just the way that it's been packaged is so, I think it's harmful in some way, in many ways, right? But it doesn't share the full experience, right? Like, it doesn't share this that you're saying here, that it's it's not just about, let me, match the energy of the person that I want to be. Like, how am I going to match that energy when I'm worried about food, right? Like, how am I going to match that energy when I don't feel safe in my body? Yes. Right? Like, how am I going to match the energy? Like, some of us, right, can't even dream, right? We can't even imagine, because we are so colonized in our own body, so oppressed, right? So like mired in our, like, the traumas that we've been through, that, like, we can't even, third eye completely blocked. We can't see.
Third eye what? It's blocked. Right? Like, your pineal gland is calcified in a mug, right? Because you cannot see beyond your fears. You cannot see beyond your fears. And you can be so comfortable in your fears that the only thing you can conceptualize are things that are born from that fear. I'm supporting some women, well, some people, because, some of them are men as well, doing some, like, mindset coaching, right? Which is essentially, like, understanding what it is that you want in business, and then determining what is getting in the way from you being able to, like, create that. And it's so interesting, especially, people who are helpers, right? Who are therapists and coaches in their own right. It's so interesting because we're so taught not to think about money, right? We're so taught to be limited in the perspective of how we can help based on our training, because you go to a job and they tell you what you can and can't do, and then somehow you think that that's, how life really works. That when people come in and they're told, this can look any way you want. Like, what do you want to do? Right? Like, what do you want to do? What do you like to do? Right? Like, who do you want to work with? It's like, but no, I can, and this doesn't really make any sense for me, because, I need to, and I just be like, And then we get deep in the conversation and they're holding on to stories that have been given to them, right? They have products and they have courses that like, and pathways to healing and helping because they've been doing this work for so long. And they're like, oh my God, I did it. And they're broke and they have no income and they're sitting on money, right? Yep. And not that it's all about money, but like money is a tool and we need to have all our tools in our toolbox to be able to function effectively earthside. So I say all that to say is, you know, it starts with what you believe, but it doesn't end there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it doesn't end there.
So good. So good. Okay. So talk to me about, you know, you've mentioned here in a few instances, the people that you work with, right? You know, what kinds of breakthroughs or like results have you witnessed as a result of really merging the spiritual and human work?
Yeah. So one of the things that I have found to be most interesting, especially about the people who are attracted to me, because even though I predominantly work with Black women, I also do some work with Black men as well. But the people who are most attracted to me, and I think this is the case with everyone, because I do think that we all come earthside with aspects of ourselves that are spiritual. But it's beautiful to witness when they go through something that I call the clearing, right? Like when they clear out the energetic muck of trauma and pain, whether it's lived or ancestral, to watch people's spiritual gifts open up. Like to really watch people's spiritual gifts open up. It's like time and time again. The ability to tap into their intuitive knowing, the ability to create and craft lives that feel whole, the abandoning of these stories that like no longer serve them, right? So like I watch people who thought that they were very driven by finances, right? Like I like money. I like nice things, right? But when we unpacked it, it wasn't really so much about the money, but it was about the ease that money created and the ease that they thought that they needed because of the trauma, right? So I can't tolerate any kind of discomfort, which means I need to work very hard to earn a certain amount of money so that I can always fly first class and always do da-da-da-da-da. And I'm a first class chick, so I love first class, right? However, if the foundation is driven by your trauma and fear, then you're constantly replicating those traumatic experiences in how you do the thing, right? Now, fear is always embedded in the thing. So like when we clear it out, we're, you know, able to determine from a place of joy and love and fearlessness that, and peace, really, like, I enjoy ease. And ease comes when I feel safe in my body, right? So like, I don't need to have all of these other things. This job actually doesn't allow me to feel safe in my body. So I don't care how much money I earn. I don't want to work here. I want to do this instead, right? I want to have these experiences instead. So when we merge the spiritual and the clinical, we are able to not only fully understand what we've been through and to address how those experiences have impacted our body, we are able to clear out the energetic muck of ancestral experiences to connect to ancestral knowing and to our own embodied knowing to craft lives that feel whole and well and aligned. So we're not only saying, I no longer feel anxiety. Whoop-de-doo, that's great. You should have never felt that before. But now what are we moving into? Now what are we creating? Now what are we crafting? Now what are we holding that feels pure, that feels good, that feels aligned for the lives that we want, right? We move from simple symptom amelioration into full, whole, thriving lives.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I love that distinction around like first class, right? That like what's like the anchor is the difference, right? Like what's anchoring that could be I I have identified that ease is important to me. It's something that I value, and I'm gonna give myself that because that's something that I'm
Mm-hmm.
worthy of or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, I don't want to, I have a hard time tolerating discomfort.
Yeah, like I don't
Right?
have the capacity. I don't have the capacity
I
to
don't
deal with
want to deal with it.
discomfort. Yeah, like I don't want nobody talking to me. I don't want no. It's very
Yeah.
different experiences
So
in the
different.
body, and it's also lending itself to your understanding about your own capacity to do and to be, right? Because to say that I value ease, I believe that I deserve it, and so I am moving towards easeful experiences. It's very different from I can't, right?
Yes.
Because I can't can be extrapolated into other areas of your life where if you were to like really address your trauma and to really be able to find safety in your body and in your spirit, you will be able to be like, yeah, I can. Right? And I choose to, or I choose not to. I choose to address it this way, or I choose not to, but I can. Right? Which is a very different way. We move from being reactive to being responsive.
Yep.
Right. And, maybe even proactive so that we can actually create. But the reactivity is that instinct, impulsive. I'm not thinking, I'm not considering,
Right.
This needs to happen. That like ego-based control that is dangerous, that we do want to move away from because it really doesn't serve us at all.
Yep. Oh, I love this conversation so much. Okay. I want to be super mindful of time. Just going to ask one question out of like the 20 that I have in my head. So, you spoke about like the clearing, right? Which I love that like visual. And sometimes you need to clear stuff from this lifetime, but also stuff from even past lifetimes or stuff that's like ancestral. And so, for folks who might be listening, might be like, wait, so I already got to clear my shit. So I also got to take care of shit in my lineage. What gives? Like, what do you, like, how do you think about that? How do you help folks kind of think about doing that work and that really the work is connected in a lot of ways?
Yeah. So the way that I help people to conceptualize it is this isn't cute, but I mean, because we're not, because we're not garbage cans, right? But like, think about when you have garbage in your home, right? And like, maybe you have buried, like, let's say that you throw something away by accident, right? I have bangles on today. So like, they're kind of loose. So like, let's say I throw something away in there and like one of my bangles falls off. And I noticed like, damn, like, where's my bangle? But throughout the course of the day, right? Throughout the course of the day, other people have thrown things away. Now I have to dig through the garbage to be able to find the jewel that's there, the thing that is valuable to me that's there, right? When we know that we embody both our lived experiences and our ancestral experiences, what I want people to understand is that there is a piling up that occurs, right? There's a piling up that occurs on top of the spirit. And when we have experiences that, let me back up a little bit. Ancestrally, there's wisdom that like all of our ancestors held, right? Knowledge about the world, knowledge about themselves, knowledge about ways to live, ways to be, that we know we can exemplify and live out in like our lifetimes that will support us in having lives that feel aligned for us. So just like we have ancestral trauma, we have ancestral resilience. And so I want you to consider the ancestral resilience to be like the bangle that's at the bottom of the garbage when there's been shit piled on top and piled on top of it. And so, what you're going to look for when you're doing this work is that knowledge that's embedded in you that is missing because of all of the pain points that are more prominent than the joy that's there, right? Than the joyful knowing that's there. And so I ask people to consider it an honor, to yourself and to your ancestors and to your future lineage of like doing the work of shifting that story. Because imagine if you didn't know that you come from a lineage of kings and queens, or like herbalists or mediums or spiritual helpers. You would feel so very much alone in your existence, not knowing that the things that you're driven to do are things that really are in your DNA. More often than not, you're not the first person in your family who wanted to do that. You're not the first person in your family who went through that. And there's information that your ancestors hold for you about how to shift. And there's so many ways to tap into that information. And so what I offer people is, yes, it feels absolutely daunting. And it gets to be an honor. You get to choose to view it as an honor and a gift to yourself and to anyone who comes after you, and for sure to your ancestors, to do that clearing work, because what it gives to you, I've never seen it fail. I've never seen it fail. And so, yeah, if you can know and trust yourself that you can hold it, that you can move beyond the discomfort of now, what's on the other side gets to be beautiful. It gets to be really
I don't want to cry. I don't want to fuck up my makeup. But I co-sign. I co-sign. I've spoken a lot and openly about my grandmother who transitioned at the top of this year. And, you know, like how much a lot of her transitions coincided like with my transitions, and how much I was able to witness her and my mom's relationship parallel to my relationship and my mom's relationship, and how it's been so life-changing. Like I'm still working through that and processing that. Like it's in the span of, I don't know, like maybe like a few months to a year, it was like my heart was like blown completely open. My eyes has just been open in ways that I never, ever, ever experienced. And that was, you know, she was already in the process of transitioning, right? I'm just like waiting for her to do her thing on the other side. So like we could kiki, because
take a little bit of time, but not much. It's worth the wait. It's worth the wait.
You know, be like, you know, I know, take your time. I'm not trying to rush you, but you know, when you're ready, I'm ready.
But whenever you're ready, I'm here.
You know, I got my cafecito ready. Like, let's go. Let's chat. Because I know that there's a lot of things that, you know, we couldn't chat about. We couldn't like, you know, there were so many different things, you know.
You about to, you know, I came to this work similarly, right? Like it, you know, spirituality is something I've always been interested in searching. I remember being a little girl and being like, yes, that's for me. Or my father making comments to me about, you know, how I just like to dress and certain things I like to like wrap my head up, you know, because I grew up Christian, and even though I no longer identify as Christian, you know, my family is still very Christian. And so, you know, he would be like, you look like one of those people. You look like, you know, one of those people, right? Fast forward 30 years. I'm one of those people, right? I'm one of those people. But I came to seeking from this place of dealing with my mother's transition, right? And in the ancestral work there, I was able to really understand the story of mothers and daughters in my family, right? The story of women and men in my family. You know, during my spiritual ceremonies, my paternal grandmother who has transitioned, she came forward, right, spiritually, and she asked me to support in getting the you know, her side of the family together. And so we did that this summer. And I learned so much about the women on my father's side of the family and their relationship with men. And that mimics my own experience with men. And so I'm just like, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I smell tobacco all the time because the women and men in my family like to smoke. They like to drink rum. Oh, wait a minute. This is right. And it helps me to understand myself in such a way where I don't feel lonely. You know, there's lessons in those stories. I was so afraid of having a daughter because of my relationship with my mother and her relationship with, her mother.
And
And
you
my
have a
mother.
daughter, right?
Yes, I have a daughter and we're
Oh.
very close. And I thought my daughter was going to hate me. I thought like because of that, but because of the knowing that I was able to develop, I was able to repair that, right?
Yes.
In my lineage. That is a broken, traumatic point, right?
Yeah.
That disconnection, that resentment, that angst, that lack of community between mothers and daughters from the teenage years on. I have broken that. My daughter is 15. She's a teenager, but we are close and we can communicate and, we can talk. And so like we have to know so that we don't feel alone and foreign and like it's just us. It gives us a sense of like community, even with those who have transitioned. And the information can support us in not only knowing ourselves, but repairing, right, what we feel is so much broken in us. The story of depression in my family, the story of abuse between men and women in my lineage, I was like, this is why, right? And it just helped make the healing quicker for me.
Come on, speak on it.
It helped make the healing quicker for me, right? Like quicker for me. My initial point of real healing came through my, spiritual godmother, who's my spiritual teacher. It didn't come with my therapist. I found my therapist after. I needed spiritual intervention, clear spiritual information first, spiritual accountability and guidance first, before I could even get to the depth, right, that I am able to reach with my therapist. And my therapist is also a spiritualist who can also hold me accountable. So she merges the two as well. And so like the up leveling it's different on this side,
Listen.
And can I just add one more thing?
Yes, please, girl. I got time. I don't know if you got the time, but I got the time.
I'm gonna go like this. And the accountability is different on this side.
Mm-hmm.
The spiritual up leveling is different. The work hits different. It in some ways can be faster because the information is clearer. It's more specific, especially when you're engaging with, spiritual tools, like real spiritual tools. And the accountability is also different because now there's clarity. And once again, you can choose to do whatever you want to do. And the consequences and the accountability for those choices hit you in your face a little bit harder too. And so we have to allow ourselves to experience both for the fullness. So there is no perfection. There is no easy. There's ease, right? There's the complexity of it. And we get to exist in the human and the spiritual for the fullness of the lived experience that we're supposed to have, So, yeah.
Oh, I love this so much. Thank you so much for your generosity and just like sharing your experiences. I don't know when it was, but I literally was talking, it might have been on social, about this thing around connecting with your ancestors. Like you, I don't know how to work any other way, right? It's like, yes, the way that I was trained is very much, it's like whatever, we're working with the material that but there's so much more than just what we know, what's even in our awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was mentioning, it might have been in a story, how results or like outcomes are not only better, right, but they are faster. And the amount of therapists that responded to that story talk about, what? You can do this? We could do this work faster? Wait, what? And I was like, see, well, that's why I left the field, right? Which I know, not everyone like has to. That was very much like a personal choice.
But I completely understand what you're saying. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's just like, no, like I would always tell my business coaching clients, like, you could do whatever you want. And once you realize that you could do whatever you want as a practitioner, to your point, then you get to choose, right? Either you could stay in the little box that was given to you, or you could bust out the box, create your box, and like figure it out. And actually, like, live out your purpose in this lifetime. I don't know. I don't know about other people, but like, I ain't trying to come back. I'm trying to do what I'm trying to do now, because I'm not
Listen, you
trying
know
to come
what?
back.
Let me tell you, I was already told I'm gonna have to come back because I was hard headed so early.
Ooh.
And I'm just like, at least let me come back. Let me come back where I'm creating a little bit more ease for myself. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm not gonna be so hard headed now. I'm not gonna be so hard headed now. Let me work in my purpose. My people live long. So, God willing, I have many more years to live. Let me just keep on this road, because I know I spent a whole bunch of time not doing what I was supposed to be doing. 100%. Like, I remember people being like, why don't you train someone to do, to do work how you do the work? I was like, I can't. Ain't no. And this was before I fully understood, my gifts. And I'll be like, I just know what I know. Like, there's no textbook for this, right? There's skills we learn, but I can't train people. And so what I'm blessed to have found clinicians to work with in my practice who have their own gifts, who have their own knowing, who have their own interests, right? And even then, it's difficult because we're not given the language to explain to them as we train them. And so we're talking about intuition. We're talking about embodied knowing. We're talking about somatic work, because we have to use these terms that we've been given, right? And they're limiting. And I like to name that in the beginning now, right? I'm in this, if you want to work with me this way, I'm going to tell you how I'm going to be limited to work with you. So let me offer you this, because with this, we can do so much more, and I don't have to be concerned with a licensing board being like, oh,
What
like,
you doing over there?
what you doing over there?
What do you find that people are afraid, or they're like, oh my God, what's gonna come up?
Yes, 100%. And the thing is that they're afraid of that with therapy anyway, right?
True.
But because the language for therapy is so widely used now, people are no. Like, I want you to do therapy with me, and I have to be clear. I come to the table as my full self, no matter which one you choose. That's 100%, true. And what I can offer, like, I can be like, come here and let's do a head rogation. Let me hook you up with the spiritual reading. Let's do this bath. Let's do this, without having to worry if we're doing wellness work, right? With the therapy piece, especially if you want to use insurance, they want a diagnosis. They wanted and so I really am moving away from that work in my own work, because it is limiting. And I have to be very honest about that. It's limiting. It's limiting. And there's only but so long we can do that before I have to tell you we've reached our wall, because there's more that you need. But under this service that you've chosen, I cannot give it to you. I cannot give it to you.
No, I mean, absolutely. And like, no, for real, like, the last thing I'll say is like, I don't know if you know this, but it was an ancestor from my grandmother's side who was like, you're more than a therapist. And I lost it. When I tell you, Melissa, like, I had an identity crisis. I was like, what you mean? Like, I was so wrapped up in my titles and my accomplishments and all of that. But that was really the beginning of the end, because I was like, I know y'all don't be stuttering, right? So like, I know y'all said what y'all said. I know I heard what I heard, but there's a part of me that's like, nah, right? Because then I have to like the work that's required to like really take in that information, right?
Yeah,
so like,
and
it
the
takes
reality,
a lot of courage.
100%. And now what? To be, fully transparent, since we talking, I was told I'm going to have to choose. I'm not going to be able to do therapy much longer. One, because the people who I'm purposed to work with at this stage in the game for me have to already come with a certain amount of understanding and knowing to be able to get to where I'm supposed to take them. There are going to be some people who I'm going to be opening the door for as well, because they need me to do that. There's certain kinds of people I'm not going to be able to work with for much longer, right? Because Spirit is very clear how my gifts show up and like how they're meant to be used. It's not meant to be used on a certain population, because it's almost like a waste. right? And not that helping anybody is ever wasted, but there's
exactly
so much more, and people who are committed to a certain amount of pain who haven't come out of that require a lot of me, and energetically, because I take on everything in my physical body, it creates illness for me, right? And so this is the other thing that like people don't fully have an appreciation for, because they don't know, of course, because you don't live in a village, so like you don't see the after effects. But when you have a helper who is spiritually inclined, who chooses to work with you, they choose to use their body and their spirit as a vessel, and it takes from us. And so we come to the table prepared to say, I know that this might make me sick. I don't know if I'm going to know myself an hour from now. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do anything else for my child who lives in my home for the rest of the day, because spirit be moving. Yeah. And I'm prepared to do that for you, because you have to come committed. And so there does come a point for us where like spirit says you can't work with certain kinds of people because they don't come committed. Right. And it takes too much of you, and I have work for you to do, and they can't be wasting your time.
Girl.
They can't be wasting your time.
And the courage for you to be like, the courage, the grief, the being like, oh, I gotta end this. Oh my God, right? Because again, like spirit be spiriting in the spirit world, and like we're in this human world, right? And so it's just like, holy shit, like wait, and I have to end, and like the grief, and how do I become resource to, take care of myself through that and through the ending, because I need to be obedient. I want to be obedient, girl. It's the whole thing. I tell people it's like firefighters. I see ourselves as like us as firefighters. We literally go into the fire with our bodies. Like people don't
get it.
They don't.
And especially if you're spiritually inclined, you could have ended a session with a client. You're not talking to the client. Maybe like you didn't meet with them for 2 weeks, a month, whatever, and you just be sitting down and sort of be like, and
you gotta be like, okay, bro, like so, like.
Right. I'm not.
Where's the zipper? Where's the off switch? Where it at?
And so then there are things that like we also have to learn. And if you're working with people who have spiritual gifts, like there are things that you have to learn to teach. There are like other teachers you have to expose. It is a commitment. Girl, it's a commitment. It's a commitment. And, that's why I'm like, you probably heard me say a lot of times on social media, you cannot be dipping in and dipping out. Like you have to trust that you find helpers and healers that you're meant to do work with for a period of time. And if you say this person isn't meant to carry me all the way through because I'm prepared to stop here, then like stop there and release. Like you guys release each other from the work so that there can be freedom in that versus it feeling like something that is being held hostage. So all that to say, we could have millions of conversations about this because I don't think people talk about this enough, and there are a lot of clinicians, people who are clinically trained in hiding, right?
Listen, that could be a business, a podcast,
listen, there are a lot of clinicians in hiding because we don't feel like we can. And as a consequence, there are people who are looking for us who are left with these other people who do not know how to serve them and who give them these labels that do not properly fit them. That's a whole nother conversation. So, but yeah.
Girl, I had the one video or like live that I did when I still had the healing strategy. This was like maybe a year or two ago, where I shared that, I was like reclaiming my spiritual gifts and like, what's been locked in my lineage forever. To this day, that is still the most watched video, most engaged video. And that's a business coaching, right? Like, yes, for therapists, but it wasn't making sense. I'm like, well, I know why this is happening. It's because a lot of y'all are scared, right? So.
Listen, I can't, I was sharing with my spiritual godmother, the women have not stopped coming, right? Like the women who I know I'm meant to support, they have not stopped coming. They just come through the business coaching side now, right? Like, cause I'm, supporting, someone who's very dear to me, who who has helped me grow my business in an aspect of I'm offering through her business, some work, and the women are showing up in there, and I'm like, oh, so you're just going to send me more people, no matter which door they're coming through, they're just going to come, right? Because there are clinicians who have strong spiritual gifts who don't know how to connect to them enough to use them to their benefit, much less the full benefit of their clients. And they need us. Those people need us. Like people who are looking for us need us.
So how do people find you? Because so it looked like you got range, right? You're doing a couple of different things,
just a little.
So let us know. It sounds like for folks who are looking for a practitioner, but also practitioners who are looking for a coach, like just tell us kind of like the suite of your services.
Well, what I will say is I am currently in transition. So to be fully, full transparent, I'm currently not taking any more therapy clients at all. I will continue to work with the ones who I've been working with, but I'm not taking any new therapy clients right now. I am working with, Black women and men. Men, I'm a wink on the men because they, tend to like bogart their way in and find me, but who are, seeking to understand themselves better and develop new patterns through listening to their mind, body, and spirit, and like merging all of those things together. And the best place to find me is on Instagram. Right. So it's at Melissa Ifill, LCSW. That's the best place to find me. And you can also find me at raw, RAW, the number 2, HEAL.com, raw2heal.com. In my Instagram bio, you can book a convo with Mel session to kind of get to know me better. If you have a question, like one area that you need some support with, you can book like a session there. And through those conversations is where we kind of see if we need to do more work and then what that work can look like based on your needs.
Yes, awesome. Well, thank you so very much again for your time, your generosity. We are definitely going to do a part 2. My gears are already turning because I think that I had already gotten the guidance around where the season was headed, and no coincidence that you were my first guest because it's about to be on and popping. So
okay, hey, I'm here for it.
We are definitely, I'll definitely reach out for a part 2. For folks who are listening in, go ahead and you can check out the show notes to see Melissa's emails and Instagram and how you can find her. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me, love. This was a pleasure.